Hey, good evening, friends. My name is Dr.Rajev B Sharma, and this session we have specially kept. I don't know how many of you have attended the last Saturday session on which we had a discussion on NAP 2020. But this session we have specially kept for people who are connected in education, educators or with educationists. And with me, I have pleasure of introducing Dr. Ravi Srinivas. Raviji, if you can come live, please. And by the time you come live, a request to all the people in the session. This session is going to be pretty intense. This is focused only on education, educationist, uh, where we will give you some presentation on our thoughts on NAP 2020. We will also have Ravi coming with his perspective as an international educator and saying what's happening across the world. And then we'll have a Q&A session. But two requests to all of you, except for me and Ravi, I will request all of you to be mute and also be video off. So that's my request to all the people. Hi, welcome, Ravi. And and thank you very much. I think it's very, very early for you in US and Houston. Welcome.
Thank you, Rajiv. I'm glad to be joining you all this afternoon. It is early in the morning for me. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I've been up for a few hours trying to get ready for our meeting today. So I am so glad that you're joining, and I'm excited to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You have been such a support always. And so we have Ravi people on the Zoom session, and we have also on the Facebook Live. But as you can understand, this is a very focused session only for education people. We don't have the usual number of people what we have. Because there we have a lot of parents and students, right? So this discussion of ours is pretty focused. And okay, so let's start. Shall we, Raviji?
Let's go.
Okay, so before I start, I would just like to introduce Dr. Ravi to you. Dr. Ravi, obviously, as you can understand, he's an Indian, but he's an Indian American, let me put it that way, has been in US for last 26, 27 years, deeply involved into the education system of USA. As an educator, as an administrator, though he spent most of his time in higher education, but he has deep roots in the school education, and not only in the US, but in Europe, because he was the general secretary, executive director of St. Thomas Trust, which used to handle a lot of education institutes across the world, to be precise, 39 of them, and few of them were schools across the world, including Europe. So he has a deep knowledge on this entire subject what we're talking of, and we are lucky to have him sharing his experience on the implementation. See, as you guys all know, we will be talking about the policy. So this is a policy as of now, but what may be the implementation look like, right? Is there any model? Is there any experience which Ravi can share with us so that we are better prepared when the policy is getting implemented? Is the area we will also be discussing apart from the policy. So thank you again, Raviji. Welcome again to the session, and we'll start. Let's start, sir. Okay, yeah. Okay. So as you can understand, we're talking about the new education policy. And what did it say? So the policy is basically it's a policy document. So what is a policy document? In my words, it's a letter of intent. It's an intent the government has said about the education in India. Of course, there had been two past NEPs in the modern India or independent India. One was in 1968. The second one is in 1986. The 1986 during Rajiv Gandhi's time was modified in 1992 during Narasimha's time. So that was a slight modification, but it was part of 1986. But important thing, this is the first education policy of the 21st century. Other important thing, See, India is a signatory of 2015 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030. And this is confirming to that whatever India is a signatory. So the education area, by the way, is covered up in goal number 4. So that's why we call it SDG 4. This policy aims that by the time we implement it, and obviously the implementation timeline they are given up to 2040 overall, so that's over a period of next 20 years, this will be the best education system in the world. They want Indian education system to be one of the best in the world. So that's the aim in which they are going. And if you look at the references, what they've taken a lot of references as per the document on the Indian heritage, the knowledge and the thought of the Indian, let's say, education system, the past, and hence that's what has been taken here. So Raviji, as we go forward, your quick words on, what do you think your first words on NAP 2020?
Thank you, Rajiv. I am going to be going off video whenever you are on to minimize bandwidth connection for me, just because to make sure that everybody is receiving and hearing you clearly, both image as well as audio. So, as Rajiv said, I've been in the US for a long time. As a matter of fact, I've been here for almost 35 years, both as a student and as a working professional in higher education in the US, with strong connections to school-based education here as well. I have maintained my interest in what's going on in India for all this time. And I have to share with you that I'm really excited about the new education policy. There is so much there, and I've spent the last 10 days, if you will, mainly studying this new policy. One of the things that I would like to add to what Rajiv said is to provide you with a US context to understand the nature of education policy here. The first thing to keep in mind is that the role of the federal government, as we call it here, which is central government here in the US, the role for education policy is really very, very limited. Most of the education policy is determined at the state level. And each of the states has a lot to say about the nature of the education policy. So what it really means is that there is not much uniformity. And therefore, it can be a challenge to understand the education policy as a whole in the United States. Now, it would be very safe to say that many of the states in the United States are facing common challenges. And interestingly enough, these challenges share something in common with what the new education policy in India is aimed to address. So there are these common challenges which can become a really good basis for our discussion. Rajiv did talk about the UN Sustainable Development Goal, and I can tell you that the United States ignores anything coming from the United Nations, and this has been going on for a while. But nevertheless, US wants to have a major say in what goes on in the UN. But when you think about the NEP 2020, it does, from my point of view, I think it's a really exciting time. If you have anything to do with education in India, whether it's at the school level or the college level, I invite you to really study this document. Yes, it is about 65, 66 pages, but I tell you, every paragraph in that is so rich that helps us come up with some understanding of what the future of education will be like in India. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you. Thank you. So Raviji, I was, when we were discussing, if you remember, though the visible reference, what the policy has taken is to repeatedly the Indian old traditional education system. But a lot of things I see, because I'm also involved, not like you, but I'm also involved in the international education systems. because we being the largest B2B study abroad company or in South Asia, I find a lot of words, references taken from the international system. So is this true? Is my understanding correct? Or would you like to throw some point on the same?
Well, thank you, Rajiv, for that point. It's a very, really important point. If you look through the document, there are references to the traditional education systems in India. For example, references to Nalanda University, Takshashila, and so on and so forth. There is also emphasis on individuals who have come out through this system who have a certain stature when it comes to Indian history and traditions. But when you look at the document, the way that I see it is the way that you see it too. It has definitely echoes from the past in terms of history of India. Nevertheless, what you want to really pay attention to are those things that have come about more recently at the international level, where India has been a part of global discussions on the future of education as a whole. As we go through this webinar, I'm going to talk a little bit more and include some specifics about how many elements in the proposed policy, or rather it is the national policy in India now, in the new policy that India has adopted for education, takes its root from these international efforts, most recently exemplified at a higher level in Europe, as well as, well, especially these things when it comes to school education, but when it comes to higher education, there's quite a bit of borrowing of ideas from the United States as well as other countries. So hopefully we'll get to some of the details as we go through this.
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you. So friends, I think let's go to the next step about broadly. See, according to us as TASA Asia and whatever we researched, we find that there are 7 pillars for the entire policy. Now, this is irrespective of school or higher education, and they are such. So first, they are talking of multidisciplinary, holistic, flexible education framework. So that's one of the first pillar they are talking of. If I go to the right, the bottommost pillar, they're talking of multi-linguistic power of language. They're talking of how multiple language education will be done in the local language. So that's the second pillar they are talking of. The third pillar on the left-hand side is what they want to integrate the vocational education system into the entire mainframe of the system. Because it is believed that lot of education outside the world is a vocational education, because this is what makes people employable. Again, you come on the right, they're talking of research, academic research, because in the knowledge economy, as if you have to, I will not use the word called fight, but get integrated in the world economy, it's more and more knowledge economy. It means you have to do some original work, and this original work can only come by academic research. And the academic research, the basic ethos of research should start from the lower standards, so that the students have a research bent of mind, which by the way is missing in India. Just for your information, for you guys, we only spend 0.6% of our GDP on research, whereas the advanced countries, what we call them advanced countries or developed countries, spend anywhere in the range of 5 to 6%. That just can give you an indication. The third on the left-hand side, teachers and faculties. They're very obviously and saying they want to bring back the old Guruship system and bring the teachers and the faculty as the center of the entire education system, what they're talking about. On the second right is light but tight regulatory framework. They confess that the framework currently is, very tight, suffocating. They accept that, and that's very good. And they want to make it a light and tight regulatory system. And last but not the least, the middle pillar, what they're talking of, more and more use of technology and digital education into the education system. So Raviji, these are the 7 pillars which we say. So we've of all of this, when you go through the 66 pages of document, so these are the 7 pillars. What we find on with the entire NEP is standing. So any words on the same, on the 7 pillars?
Yes, I do, Rajiv. My very first observation is that these 7 pillars that Rajiv has identified are not going to be found anywhere else. And I can, trust me, I've looked for it. And I was trying to figure out, how did Rajiv come up with these 7 pillars? And he and I have to have a lot of discussion on this. And there are many different ways that you can take the the new education policy in India and try to divide it up. But this is a very, very useful way and a very practical way for schools and colleges to really think about, right? So, so it's a good starting point. It's great we are looking at these 7 pillars. When you think about the 7 pillars put together, it gives you an idea about this new education policy, which is rather very comprehensive. And you will not find a comprehensive education policy in the United States, either today or even if you go back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from today. You will not find it. And why? Simply because of the nature of the US Constitution and what it really says. The US Constitution delegates the responsibility for education to the states and the localities in the United States, and not necessarily at the national level. And that's one of the reasons why you will not see a national education policy. But does the central government, the federal government in the US have a role to play? Absolutely. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go along. But if you were to look at, are there any pillars of the national education policy in the United States at the national level? And really what you're thinking about is, 3 pillars, if you will, or really basic overall goals that have existed for a really, really long time. And so the 3 pillars, if you will be access, equity, and quality. Now, when you think about access, equity, and quality, and try to understand them from the context of the 7 pillars that Rajiv has identified, you'll find that these 7 pillars really fit into it, right? And in fact, as a matter of fact, if you were to look for access, equity, and quality, you will find comparable or the same words in the national education policy that was just announced by the central government in India. So in many ways, the goal of education policy is really very comparable, not only between India and the United States, but the world as a whole. And here's an interesting thing. Let me tell you this, right? The Ministry of Education, or its equivalent in the US, which is the Department of Education at the federal government level, was only established in 1980. It is very recent when you think about the history of the country. And previously it was part of Health, Education, and Welfare Department. And then it became an education department, but still it does not have the main role that the central government has in the United States. Rajiv.
Okay. For audience, let me just add, education in India is on a concurrent list. So when the concurrent means, it is under purview of center as well as state. So even states are, as you go by, will realize states are free to have their own understanding of this policy. But what this policy says is the overall level, what as India we will do, not elements, but the same elements, but a different view can be taken by the state government in their own state. That's why you'll find in India, let's say school system is concerned, there's a centralized school system, you have like ICSE and CBSE, whereas each state has its own state board. And as for the higher education concerned, there are central universities, which they have, or their center institutes, like a central universities, like, I can talk of JNU or, IGNU, or let's say the center institutes are like your IITs and IIMs and Indian Institute of Science or AIMS, like that. But there are also similar engineering colleges, medical colleges that the state has. So in India also, it is a concurrent subject. But of course, center has a role to play. And this is the direction those guys has given to us. So after looking at the pillars, let's quickly go and look at the school education. By the way, audience, I think, I don't know whether I missed that or no. I expect this session to go on for 90 minutes. So please bear with us. We are trying to have a very intense discussion on our national education policy. So in school education, let me first give. Okay, so according to me, this one diagram explains a lot of things in the education system. The old education system, we had 10+2, where the government had, let's say, a structured education. What they have was from first standard, it went up to 12th standard. So up to 10th standard is, that is 10, and then you have 2, which is 11th and 12th. Below first standard is unstructured. That's where currently we have a lot of preschools in the urban area. I'll repeat that to you. The preschool phenomena in India is an urban phenomena. And if there are any audience which own or run preschool, you had a, there's nothing wrong in it, but you had a, you were doing on your own, you were on your own. But one of the biggest changes, what they are changing, now the current system of 10+2 is going to move to what they're calling is 5+3+3+4. And there's a unstated before 5, that is 3. So if you really ask me, they're talking of 3+5+3+3+4. Okay, let me explain what I'm saying. First, the government says that the ECC stage, which is early childhood and child care stage, right, which is in urban area is under preschools. In rural areas, there's no school, but there's something called Anganwadi or something similar to that, which is like a daycare. Those will come under a structure. I'm repeating that to you. They will come under a structure, and there are guidelines which will come. NCRT, which is a body which gives a guidance on the academic area, making curriculum, would step in, and they will give a guidance on what needs to happen in a preschool. But before that, very important thing, I know if you're all educated, but you're also parents, the government is saying that from 0 to 3 years, they will also structure something where where the parents can actually teachers. I'm repeating this to you. So I think they're not stating it, but it may emanate from the Indian mythology of Abhimanyu, where it was said that Abhimanyu, when even he was in mother's stomach, learned things. So I think they strongly believe in that, because I've seen a lot of, let's say, gurus and spiritual gurus in India having, schools, even for pregnant ladies, right? And then they start something with the kids. So I think, I'm not sure, they're not stating this, but I believe it's emanating from there. So in the current structure, there's going to be a structure from 0 to 3 years, which is home-based, where parents can act as teachers. Then when a child goes to preschool between 3 to 6 years of age, right? There's a preschool which will get into accreditation. By the way, currently preschools are not in the accreditation in India, right? There are a lot of preschools we have. They will come under accreditation. What you need to teach maybe will be guidance will be given to you like you have in schools. Of course, there are schools which also have preschools, so they will also come under preview. Then year 1 and 2 is also under foundation stage. So out of 3 stages, there's the first foundation stage of 5 years, which means 3 school and preschool, and 1st and 2nd standard in a school. Then the child will get into 3rd and 5th standard, which is again into school, is preparatory stage, 3 years. Then middle stage, which is 3 years again, which is class 6 to 8, and a second stage of 4 years from 9 to 12. Again, that is divided into phase 1 and phase 2. Before I go further, this is the broad structure. Raviji, any comments on this structure?
Very quickly, the new structure that is proposed is very comparable to that in the United States. Yes, there are minor differences. We don't really need to worry about it. But here are a few things, right? So when you talk about if you have a child that is, the child is 3 years old or 4 years old, so we're really talking about pre-kindergarten, kind of preschool type of a thing. Attendance at a school is not really mandatory. But many schools do provide this education, which is preschooling, that is only free for poor students and for those from other disadvantaged groups, both social as well as economic. But when you think about kindergarten, which is KG, that is commonly called in India, we're talking about 5-year, 6-year-olds. It's not mandatory in the United States. Definitely not mandatory in some states like in Texas. And in most of the states in the United States, it's not mandatory. But it's free. If you want to send your child to kindergarten, it is free. But if your child is 6 years old, you have to send the child to school. It is mandatory. In national law, if you will, you have to send your child to school. A 6-year-old child can be placed in first standard or first grade that we call here, or maybe placed in kindergarten based upon some kind of an assessment. Give you an example. We sent our son to preschool at a private Montessori school, simply because we would have to pay to send our child anywhere. But KG onwards, kindergarten onwards, all the way into high school, we sent our son to a public school. And just let you know, I have only one son. Not that you need to know, but it's only that one kid that I'll talk about. Rajiv.
Thank you, sir. To clarify what Sarah said, by the way, in India, preschools are not going free. Yes, Anganwadi, when they get converted, because those are like public schools, right, will be free. So but Anganwadis are mainly into rural areas at this point of time. And preschools are pretty popular now. In fact, I have seen preschool models getting into rural areas of India. I will say rural, they are not talking of very, very small rural areas, villages, but yes, small towns, which has also become popular. And by the way, I'm sure all of you know, you pay a higher fee actually in a preschool than you pay in a school, actually in India, by the way, sir. Your per month fee is higher than what you may be paying in a maybe a regular school. Okay, but a point to note, as I'm repeating this, is that there's a structure which is getting a structure. Yeah, I think somebody's talking. Can you put him mute off? Galaxy J7, can you put his mute? Thank you. So important thing is that the Montessori, what you're talking of, sir, in USA, in India, it's preschool. I think we also call Montessori sometime, but it's preschool. That is going to be structured now. So I will now go in slightly details of each of these, or these 4 stages, to just give an example. So foundation stage, as I said, is from 0 to 8 years. The government is saying into phase 1, phase 2, 0 to 3 years, where the child, whatever need to be taught, will be taught at home by his parents. And by the way, from where it's coming? It's actually coming from a study, a scientific study, which is worldwide, saying that the maximum 85% of the development of a child happens up to 6 years old. Right? So that's why we are saying, they're saying that we need to get the grip in the foundation stage itself. Because the other challenge what the government found out, especially in the public schools, that by the time when they took the testing in the 5th standard or up to 8th standard, a child was not able to do a simple thing what a first standard child does, basically reading and something in basic mathematics. So that's a big challenge in India, especially public education system, because agar foundation hi nahi rahega, so anything when they come later is they're going to miss it. And hence India has very high proportion of dropouts in the school education, especially by the time they come to 6th to 8th. There are very, very few students which actually go up to 11th and 12th. I'm talking of percentage wise, right? I'm not giving you any numbers at this point of time, but that's the challenge what it has. So what it says, the foundation stage is 0 to 8, divided into 2 parts. This is up to 3rd standard. What will be taken? What's the output they're looking at? They're looking at universal foundation literacy and numeracy. And the time limit they have given is 2025. So all preschool people, all parents whose child are there, by 2025, you have maximum at the time you will have a structure of the foundation stage and the implementation will start. Then the next stage is preparatory stage, which is from 8 to 11 years, which is standard 3 to 5. The intent is they will build up on the foundation stage, right? By the way, they're mentioning that in 3rd standard, they're going to be an exam. I will repeat that to you. And 3rd standard, and the exam talking of a school exam, but under supervision of the board. And the intent is when whatever up to 3rd standard the child has studied, right? That basic literacy and numeracy, Does he have it? Because that's the output they want to check. So coming back again, in between standard 3 to 5, they will start introducing light books. Before that, there's no books, right? So it's all play, fun, activity-based learning which is going to happen. By the time you get into middle age, which is 11 to 14 years, standard 6 to 8, now you will be introduced to subject teachers. So again, this is a build-up on preparatory stage, but here now, subjects will be introduced, right? Second most important thing, vocational trainings will be introduced. Kids will be encouraged to take vocation trainings. So what they're mentioning vocation training, it could be like pottery, drawing, basics of carpentry, electrician, plumbing, basic like this. They're talking of vocation which will be introduced because they have noticed that by the time the kids by 8th, there are a lot of dropouts. Okay, they'll say at least by the time the kids drop out, especially in the public school system, they get one skill. Okay, that's the broad intent. And subjects are introduced. So from this, you can expect subjects to be there, and subject-wise teachers being there. Before this, there are no subject-wise teachers. Last, secondary stage, which is up to 9th and 12th, again divided into two parts. 9th, 10th is one, 11th, 12th is second. Here they're talking multidisciplinary education. So the current breakup what we have of arts, science, and commerce, I think is going to go away. There will be a lot of choice on a student to choose the subjects and make his own path. So the student can choose a subject based on his capacity, capability, interest, and what he wants to do in life. Okay, that is what they have. The vocation would be, the vocation education will be strengthened. They expect any student, so there are two things they're talking of. A student can move out of 10th. After 10th, when he moves, he can get into full-fledged vocation area. The second area they're talking of, they still continue at 12th. If the student gets on 12th, at least one vocation, he should have a good certificate, good deep knowledge, and in multiple vocation, he should have exposure. Is that what they're looking at? And hence, this is their way of putting vocation into the mainstream of the country, and most important, I think taking care of employment, because this is one area. If you have vocation, you can have employment. And I am now reminded of what Dr. Abdul Kalam said in 2007. And this is one of the inspirations what I am carrying personally. He said, when after 12th standard, every student, apart from having his 12th certificate, should have one vocation certificate, right? So that he is able to get a job. I think that's what they're mentioning. Over to Ravi, sir. Any comments, sir?
Yeah, I have a couple of really quick comments, maybe a little more than that. The first thing is that, this foundational years, in the way that it is thought about in the US, the foundational years are really the pre-kindergarten, right? So pre-K, as it is called. At that age, you're looking at 0 to 4 years at the most. Those years are really very crucial. You can't really wait for a child to learn the alphabets of any language until they get into kindergarten or the KG years. So, at that level, at the really young age, the influence of parents is absolutely very crucial. In the US system, you generally speaking, with differences in some states, you're looking at elementary school. That includes sometimes preschool, but definitely includes KG through 5th grade or 5th standard, right? And that definitely is part of the foundational years that Rajiv just talked about. How students do at that age has a lot to do with their success in the future. So beyond the elementary school, you have middle school, where you're looking at 6th grade, 6th standard to about 8th standard, about 3 years. So the structure here is that you have required subjects, but the subjects are very broad. For example, they include things like English language arts, just in terms of language, in terms of English, which is the main language here. It includes mathematics, but it really is arithmetic. It should be called arithmetic at that level, but nevertheless, it's called mathematics. And then you have science. You have social studies. You have physical education and health, for example. Interestingly enough, at the middle school in the United States, you have some electives. One of the electives is art. And, not all schools offer art. Not all schools offer a range of electives. But many times the electives are used as a way for the students who are not academically ready to catch up, or those who are ready to advance. One of the big differences in compared to the proposed policy in India is that there is no vocational track. And the basic idea is that even if you were to pursue a vocational track in the future, you have to have basic literacy of language, of mathematics, of science, of civics, if you will, in terms of social studies. Something else that happens in the United States at the middle school level is that those students who are more advanced than others are put into something called the gifted and talented track. And there is a placement by application. My son did not go through that. We just did not want to put him to it because we thought it was too early for any kind of specialization. But when you get to the high school level, you're looking at 9th grade to 12th grade, 4 years, 9th standard to 12th standard. Here is where you start to see the introduction of the credit system. So for example, you remember I said that in the United States, there is no national education requirement. States decide what's going to happen. In the state of Texas, you have to complete a minimum of 22 credits of modules or classes to get your high school diploma, if you will. Minimum 22, maximum 26. Okay, so there are again required subjects: English, mathematics, science, and social studies, with some options built into it for physical education, fine arts, health, speech, mainly ability to speak, and then credits for languages or vocational courses. So it's only in high school that you start to see the introduction of vocational subjects. And then there is also a gifted and talented track that is available many times in specialized schools that are focused on healthcare or technology or various things like that. But when you think about the Indian context, something to keep in mind is that, is middle school too early to introduce a vocational track? Maybe not. That is, again, it's contextual to the Indian system. So, that may be a good thing to do. Will it work? I don't know. Hopefully the policy can change on the basis of whether or not it works. Rajiv.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe, sir, whatever I've studied, I think the reason they have introduced vocation in a 6th standard is that the huge dropouts happen between 6th to 8th. So when the student wants to go out, when he's dropping out, they actually believe he should carry some vocation. Because if I give you a data, see, India has 48 crore youth. Out of 48 crore youth, 13 crore youth, do not have any education, any training, or jobs. Right, and youth in India is a data what they talk between 15 to 25 is the data age they're talking about.
I agree, Rajiv. That makes perfect sense to me. But here is to think about, how do you teach language? How do you, whether it's English or any other language, how do you teach mathematics? The way that you teach mathematics or science can be a way where you're introducing students to professions, right? And so this gets into pedagogy, or the way that you teach, and the ability of the teacher to deliver those goals, if you will, by getting the essential knowledge and skills, right? We don't need to debate about whether or not vocational education is a good place to start in middle school or later, but it is not what you do, but about how you do it also that becomes important. You're nodding your head, so we agree, so we can move on.
Yeah. So only one last point which I missed, I think I'd like to add, which I got a cue from you. It is said that most of the education till 5th standard needs to be in a local language, regional language, or mother tongue, and preferably 8th standard. So that's where they're trying to remove the regional, and it is believed that the student, when he studies in his mother tongue or the regional language, because that's what they're actually saying that's similar, uh, he understands better, he will learn better. And obviously that's what we said, that even the parents can get involved in that some basic sort of learning for the child. So
Okay, so Rajiv, sorry to interrupt, but here's a very important point. There's been an experiment that has gone on in the United States for the last 25 to 30 years, which is called dual language education, wherein you bring in students from the KG level, or definitely from the first standard level, all the way through the middle school, through the seventh standard level, where you're teaching them in a language that is different from English.
okay.
Right? But what happens is, as you go higher, even in these levels, you're introducing English. So that the hope is that by the time students get to the high school level, they're not disadvantaged as a result of language. So for those of the attendees who are from schools, this dual language instruction is something that you really want to keep in mind and want to learn more about. This has been successfully used in the United States. It's been used in France. It's been used in Ireland, for example, and used in many other developing countries too, wherein they start off learning in a language that is the mother tongue, if you will. But then once they get to higher levels, you start to see English being introduced. And one of the most important things in the US context is that by the time they finish middle school, they are at the same level as those who studied in English, and they're successful in high school. Very, very powerful model to think about. And if anybody's interested more in getting more information about this, get in touch with us, Ayesha, get in touch with Rajiv, and I'll be able to help you get more information about this. It's a very, very powerful way to equalize those students, in particular, not to disadvantage students who either in rural areas or urban areas start off their learning in a language that is different.
So in fact, Ravi, good point. I think that's the exact intent. As you're speaking about it, that's what I can understand. That's what the policies talks about. And by the way, in India, they're talking of 3-language formula. They're not talking of 2-language formula. There is 3-language formula. So one is going to be your mother tongue or the regional language. You can choose. Then there's the other Indian language, and third language they're talking is English, by the way. And as the student posts a standard, they are giving an option, one Indian language, one foreign language, and third is being English. So you're absolutely correct. I think that's how, and if the experiment had worked in USA, Los Angeles, at another 30 years, I think this is what they're aiming at. This is what they are looking at.
Let me give you my very blunt observation. Language has been used by politicians to divide rather than unite.
Yes.
When you look at the current discussions, if you will, especially in some southern states in India about the 3-language formula, there are those who are opposed to the three languages. Really, they're opposed to Hindi.
Yes.
But growing up, at my home, I grew up speaking Telugu. My parents were from Andhra Pradesh. They moved to Bangalore, so I learned Kannada. My parents speak Kannada and Telugu. I learned English, and then in school I learned Hindi, right? And then simply because of living in Bangalore, I learned Tamil. I can understand a little bit of Malayalam, enough to watch movies on Netflix. Okay. And it's amazing, so when you think about language, it is not really about the alphabets. It's not really about the words. Yes, it is a lot about speaking, but it's about being able to relate to people. And studies in linguistics, irrespective of language, right, helps develop human brains. So we think differently. Now, those in the audience, I want you to think about a word in English that in Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, Oriya, whatever language that you prefer, right? There are those words that can come up with a more accurate meaning. And so language is a means to understand culture. Culture is a means to understand society. So, this whole hang up over language, I can understand in some ways, but I think it is really overrated. This debate needs to go away because, from my point of view, this debate really doesn't have much to stand on.
I'm with you, and similarly as a professional traveling across the world, I can see the advantage you have if you're able to speak in that in whichever country, city, state, you're able to speak the local language. I'm saying it brings a lot of bridges, connects you well, and you're one notch above with somebody else. I as a person I really understand this, and it should, as you correctly, should not be a topic of discussion and of division. It is given, you will learn well, you will do well. That's what it said. Thank you, sir. So let's go to the next stage. After talking the first stage, we will quickly go through the philosophy. As we spoke about it, a quick philosophy points I'm saying. First, what do they say about curriculum, the school education? I believe somebody has something on. I am getting disturbance. Edwin, can you have a look at it, please? Okay, and I hope it's not mine. Okay, so yes, in curriculum, they are talking of the curriculum, they say, would become only core essentials. See, currently, the curriculum of Indian textbooks are filled to the extent that, a child, even in a, by the time he comes to third or fourth standard, is actually carrying a bag which is as heavy as 10 kgs. So the curriculum will come down to core essentials. What they will basically be, focusing on the key concept, the ideas, how to apply, what is the application in day-to-day life, and problem solving. The other area curriculum is being focused on experiential learning and the flexibility which should be given to students. So that's what they're broadly saying as a philosophy of curriculum is concerned. I think the second point, multilingual power of language, Ravi, we spoke so much about it. So they're talking of medium instruction should be broken regions, three language formula. And in language also they're saying, let's use some fun method, experiential method, so that the children learn it. To give you an example, let's say we have signed up with a couple of companies abroad because students want to go abroad. So they are obviously there. We have English language app, we have Chinese, Japanese, Spanish. And by the way it has been used using technology, I'm saying when we say it is a fun way they have looked at the language. So I can understand it can be really made fun to run language in an experiential method. So multilingualism and power of language. The third area they're talking of curriculum integration. So they're saying that the curriculum should be integrated and the choice of the student should be on subject, skill, and capabilities. So, and by the way, capabilities, what I understand is that they are levels of the subjects. As Ravi, you were saying something what we call internationally or in US called AP, Advanced Program or something like that. I think that's why they're talking of capabilities. They're looking on computational thinking. Again, this is very, very Indian, right? Whereas in a college, they are focusing on something else, but in school education, they say they're giving very, very high weightage to mathematics, mathematical thinking, computational thinking, because they believe as Indians, we have a natural talent in mathematics. Apart from multilingual language, I think the natural talent, if you look at as Indians we have, is mathematics. Of course, this will not sound music to people who don't like maths, but I can tell you this one from experience, people who don't like maths is because of, in all probability, they have not been taught well the mathematics. Otherwise, mathematics can be real good fun. But this is what they're talking of curriculum integration. So the curriculum would be integrated between the different subjects, skills, your capabilities, and computational thinking. Now coming to assessments. For assessments, they are saying that the assessment has to be for student development. See, in India, currently the way assessment is focused on rote learning and how much you can, the right word I have to use, sorry, sir, it's not a good word, how much you can vomit on paper, how much you rote learn and vomit on paper, right? So they want to actually move through this. By the way, in this, they clearly mentions a good paragraph is written about coaching classes. They say because of this rote learning and this, the way examinations are conducted, lot of students have to go to coaching classes. They expect, they want the coaching classes to go away. I don't know practically what will happen, but this is, I don't want to use something strong, but I think let me use strong. It's a sort of a warning signal to the coaching class industry of India, which is pretty large, by the way. And I'm sure many of you are part of that coaching system. But I know we are Indians, genius will find another way. But the assessment, they're looking that they should focus on learning. It should be very regular and formative. They're looking at examination in a school examination, by the way, in 3rd, 5th, and 8th, to check the learning outcome of each of these levels. As far as the board level is exams are concerned, 10th and 12th, they say they will have it in twice a year. You can improve your area. It will be done under the entire central assessment and things. There's an organization made called NAC, National Assessment Center, what they put called brand called Parak. And most important, after your 12th, if you want to take admission into a university, apart from your 12th, whatever exam marks, you have to give a UC admission exam called NTA, which is very similar what they're saying to the SAT exam, what US has, to enter into a UC system, right? By the way, both details will come of NTA, but obviously NTA, there are 2 parts they're saying. One is going to be aptitude, other is going to be subjects. What do you need to learn? And based on that, the admission happen. But they are not making it compulsory for the university to accept NTA exam. But they believe that over a period of time, this will become like a de facto standard, the way SAT has become in USA, right? They also say that the university can have their own criteria for selection. So it means the current selection system of university, if they don't agree with NTA, may continue. So, Raviji, now over to you.
So, just a couple of very quick comments. The first thing is that if you take any paragraph, and I'm telling you, members of the audience, it does not matter which paragraph that you can pick from the 66-page document. I can tell you it's a lifetime that can be spent in thinking about and trying to implement what is included in that one single paragraph, simply because it's so complicated. When it comes to the slide that Rajiv just showed you, let me talk about curricular integration. Think about real life problems. Think about our COVID-19 situation right now, which is a worldwide phenomenon, right? So you can't just use biology, chemistry, mathematics, civics, social studies, or philosophy, or what language, or whatever subject by itself to understand the nature of the challenge that we collectively face. So it is for students at whatever level, it is not really important to know what subject A or subject B or subject C says, but what from subject A and subject B and subject C can you include in coming up with a solution to a problem? That is essentially curricular integration. Yes, we know this emphasis on computational thinking. In the United States, for example, there are those who say that, think about what you learned in algebra or calculus. When was the last time you used algebra or calculus? Well, the answer is no. You hardly use calculus or algebra, but the thinking skills that you gain through learning algebra and calculus can be applied in so many contexts. So there are those again who say instead of algebra or calculus, let's help students understand about data. What is data? How data can be used perhaps more in statistics context, right? So we are really looking at older disciplines in a present context, and context becomes very important. If you want to train students to become problem solvers at different levels, then you have to move towards integration of knowledge and application of knowledge, which becomes really very crucial. I just want to add one word on, a couple of things, if you will, on the assessment, right? So again, remember that I said states are different. States decide what happens in the United States. So for example, there are public exams, if you will, for every student every year when they are in elementary school and secondary school from 1st standard to 7th standard or 8th standard, right? But the scores are used as benchmarks to measure learning at the individual level, maybe the school level and district level, and also the state level. Advancement to the next level is really very normal, kind of passing, pass kar do, let them go on. But if they need additional help because they did not do very well on these standard exams, these board exams, then they have to attend summer school. However, going from 5th to 6th standard and going from 8th to 9th standards is very strictly based upon these board exams. Why? Because if you're not ready to go into 6th standard, which is a major difference for most students, that can become a challenge to get to 8th. And once you get to 8th, going to high school can become a significant challenge. If you're not ready, you'll never pass out high school. So let's think about these board exams in a different way. They have a purpose. If done right, they can be helpful. Helpful to you. Helpful to whom? Most important, the person who it's helpful to is the student. So let's not forget the student and the student's ability to progress towards success at these different levels as a student goes through the schooling years. Rajiv.
Okay. Sir, can you just quickly tell our audience about that, something like SAT, what they're proposing of university admission test?
Okay, so what happens is at the end of the high school age, right? So students who are in 12th standard, after they finish it, they have a choice. They either go to college and get a degree or they don't, right? So if they want to go on, they have to complete the SAT, standard aptitude test, right? Standard admissions test. Or they have another option, which is the ACT, right? Let's just talk about SAT, which is more standard, right? So what happens is when they're in the 10th standard, they get to take something called the PSAT, kind of the pre-SAT. That basically tells them whether they're ready in terms of their knowledge and their ability to apply the knowledge when it comes to college education. It's a way to think about college readiness measures, if you will. Most colleges and universities in the United States required students to have an SAT for admission. And therefore, students from other countries who want to come to the United States to study at the undergraduate level always had to take the SAT. Most of them still do. But many colleges and universities are doing away with the SAT because it is not necessarily the ideal way to gauge a student's ability to succeed in college. But nevertheless, that's a good benchmark to really think about. And if there is a common national exam, if you will, SAT is definitely one of them at the high school level. And secondarily, the ACT, you have to take one of the other to get into college.
Right.
Mostly. Like I said,
Okay.
most colleges and universities have gotten away from that requirement.
Right. Thank you, sir. I can just see, I think it's 5:30. I think we'll have to slightly hurry up. Right, Ravi, sir? Audience, we will slightly hurry up now. Okay, so other key recommendations are, they're looking at school complexity and structure. It is acknowledged by the government now that the small schools which they have created over a period of years are suboptimal, right? There are many schools, there's one teacher, one building, one teacher taking multiple classes, multiple subjects. So they expect that by 2025, they're looking at the, the scenario, they want to regroup the students and make clusters is what they are looking at. And they believe, I don't know how they're going to do that. By the way, it's going to be a massive exercise for them. I have no comments on this. But yes, output is good that, they expect improved support to students, robust and improved governance, because if they're complexes, they're able to manage better. Then they're talking of standard setting and accreditation, right? In standard setting and accreditation, there are multiple bodies currently, or so the body which takes care of everything is called Department of School Education, but they say no more, which takes care of everything. They say now Department of School Education will be the apex body, which will make the policy. Under them, there will be Director of School Education, which will look after the public school system. Then there will be SSA, which is State School Standard Accreditation System. That's where I believe most of the private schools and preschools and everything that accreditation is going to come in there, right? Then they have a SCRT, which is State Board or academic standards and curriculum, which they will do, which is mapping to NCERT. And by the way, this is going to be for state schools. As for the national schools are concerned, which is CBSE and ICSE, NCERT will do that. And then there's a board of examination, obviously board of assessment. So these are going to be under all the four, let's say, structure which they have created. I think according to me, the proof of this will be on pudding. Nothing more to comment from our side as far as me and Dr. Ravi are concerned. So we'll quickly now go the topic where Raviji will spend 5 minutes. I will quickly go through what is teachers and then your comments. This is one topic where they are repeatedly saying they want the guru system or the respect to the guru or the central guru system of education to come back. And the line they are using is high respect and high status of teaching profession to be restored. They are actually saying that currently the people who become teachers, not all, but many of them, this is not the first profession they have. So they will do whatever in their power to ensure that this becomes a first choice of profession for people. Okay, the first point, how they will recruit and deploy. They say we will give scholarships to students, especially rural area, so that they are able to do only a 4-year B.Ed. We'll come about that later, but they're talking of 4-year B.Ed so that they become teachers by choice. And especially they want to push for ladies and girls so that they become a role model in the rural area in the Gaon. Out for the qualification, they are talking of a TT exam, NTA exam. We spoke about NTA plus a demo plus local language. This is the qualification for a teacher, whether public or private. This is what they expected throughout. Then they are looking at master instructors. It means people, especially in vocation, who are expert in their area, they also will be invited. They're not teachers, but they're expert in those areas in vocations and arts. They will be involved, and they want to stop transfers. By the way, this is mainly for public system. So this is what they're looking at deployment. As for service environment is concerned, they're talking of service conditions, right? It means what good service conditions. There are many places, let's say, again, a public here, I think may not be known to most of you, which in an urban area, buildings totally hai, toilets nahi hai, so many things. They want to improve the condition. They want, as I said, complexes banane hai, usko rationalization karna hai. They want involvement of the teachers in governance, and they want to give you autonomy in pedagogy. You can decide or make, they will encourage to have your own pedagogy. They're looking at continuous professional development. So for every teacher, by the way, this is for the public school or the private school, they're looking at a 50 hours per year of a CPD, which is continuous professional development. Even for principals, they're looking 50 hours. You need to go through. As for career management progression concerned, they are looking at a merit-based structure of tenure, promotions, salary, and expecting a performance system to be developed as far as this is concerned. Going further, they expect professional standards for the teachers to be set up, a body called National Council for Teacher Education, like a PSSB under GEC. We'll talk about that. What is PSSB? We'll skip that. Would be made, especially for teachers. There will be a national professional standard for teachers, NPST, by 2022. And the approach, this is most important. The complete approach to teacher education is changing, right? They say the colleges should become multidisciplinary, where the B.Ed can to start with after 12, be 4 years B.Ed, right? So you decide after 12, you will be a teacher one night. So that's of choice, a profession of choice. Second area, they are looking out MEds and even PhD in education. By the way, Raviji, I think later I'll ask you to give some idea on this, because I think US I found is one of the countries where there's a doctorate only in education. For you become a teacher, you don't become a researcher. But anyway, they are looking at a mini degree, 4 years B.Ed, as I said. They're looking at shorter certificate. They expect that if you have done an undergraduate of 3 years, then your B.Ed will be 2 years. If you have done your master's, then again B.Ed will be 1 year. If you have done 4 years of research undergraduate course, then master's, B.Ed will be 1 year. So there are various structures they have given as for teachers is concerned. Raviji, your point on according to the most important point, and the audience what we have is teachers.
Rajiv, go to the previous slide. So Rajiv was saying that we have spent so much time on talking about school education, which is a good thing. If you are teaching at a college or a university in India, or you are an administrator, you have heard about students not being prepared to be successful at that level. Well, that has a lot to do with what happens at the school level. And what happens at the school level and how students learn has a lot to do with the teachers. So, for example, in the United States, if you want to teach in a public school where 90% of all students go to, a public school is a government school. So 90% of all students school age in the United States go to a public or a government school, right? And if you want to teach there, then you have to have a teaching license. And you get the license by being certified. And the certification and the licensing is done at the state level. So if I'm in Texas state in the United States and I am able to teach because I have a license, but then I move to New York state, then I have to get a different license. And the license has requirements. And the requirements are that you have a degree. So for example, I have to have a degree, bachelor's degree, 4 years in the United States here earned equivalent in order to be able to teach. And when they look at what my degree is, it has to include two things. One is that I have to have subject specialization, which means I have to have a degree in history, science, any sciences, mathematics, business, or any area. Plus, I should have taken enough education classes to be certified as a teacher. Then I have to take an exam, very similar to what the Indian policy proposes. Then every year I am required to have professional development, mainly offered by the school or the school district, and it's easy to get the professional development hours. And all this, whether I have a master's degree or whether I have a PhD, can count towards the progression. So some of the basic ideas are really the same, Rajiv.
Yes. Okay. So there is a lot of responsibility which is going to come to you, all your teachers who are here in this session. And I also firmly believe upon what the document believes that, you are the one who can really change the system. And it's a very, very serious profession what we're talking about. Okay, sir. So in school education, there's a quick view from us as an organization. What we believe, as I told you, this is a concurrent subject. There's a probable issue which may come from states in implementation. Political issue, let me put that way. Second, a 3-language formula challenges, as Ravi already said, like Tamil Nadu has already come up and say, we'll do only 2-language formula. Then important, infra and public rural areas. This has been a challenge. This will continue to be a challenge because they expect the Anganwadis to take care, which is like a daycare center, to change to a preschool in a rural area. Currently, they are ill-equipped. Let's see how that could be done. Funding money. Since ages, we have been talking of as a country that will spend more and more money about GDP. And we were talking of 6%. And not from today. This is from last 60, 70 years. Currently, also, we are at 2.6% of GDP. Right? To reach to do this, they say that we need to reach to 6%. I don't know how and when we'll do, because I feel funding is going to be one of the biggest challenges. And the right place the funding needs to happen. Let me put that way. That's more important. Right? Then the timelines they have proposed is that the first thing they would like to change is from 2020-23 session, especially from the teachers' angle they're talking of. I think this is one. I think it's ambitious, especially because we are sitting in a COVID time and nothing normal is also happening. So forget about changes in that normal to happen. This is one area where I'm passionate about. I see India is a country where 45% of the population is involved in agriculture, right? A lot of population, the biggest passion in India is to become entrepreneur. जितने ज़्यादा entrepreneur India में मेरे हिसाब से पूरे दुनिया में कहीं भी नहीं है. Every nook and corner you are entrepreneur. Even your सब्जी बेचने वाला is an entrepreneur. Your मच्छी बेचने वाला is an entrepreneur. Your cobbler is an entrepreneur, right? So I don't think that we have anywhere in the world so many entrepreneurs. But these two things has not been included as a vocation. I think this is some very, very serious talk that needs to happen. So a student, when he goes out of, even after dropout or A standard, after 10th or 12th, if he's a son of an agriculturalist, if he learns the new technique of agriculture in the right way, it will go a long, long, long way in self-sustaining India and taking care of agriculture and making our children employable. And last but not the least, we are going to have a very, very special challenge with special boards like UP and Bihar, where such rampant corruption, everything is wrong about those boards. the boards of, the Southern India, Western India are pretty, good, decent. But I share to think some areas where what will happen. This is my view on the challenges. Raviji, quick, 1 minute on anything you want to add on the challenges.
Okay, so when you think about challenges, one thing that you're going to notice, well, first of all, when we think about challenges, we're really talking about implementation challenges. And after implementation, how successful the different states are. Now, when you think about any particular issue in India or anywhere else, let's say, for example, what are the business-friendly states in India? You'll have a long list, the most friendly versus the least friendly states. When you think about support to women's issues, you'll think about the same thing. There's a list, best to worst. And that happens even in the United States. You see states that are good, states that are going to be bad. There are going to be challenges for different states to be able to implement a new education policy in India. Funding is always an issue. I want you to think about something, right? The central government funding in the United States for public education, government education, is 6% of GDP. Okay, 6% of GDP. Big challenge in India, as Raju pointed out, it's only 2.6 now. But I want you to also think about 6% of GDP for education versus 3.4% of GDP for military expenses. For defense spending versus education spending, you definitely have, a little less than 2 times. In real dollars, few years ago, the United States spends about $13,600 per student on elementary and secondary education. Most of this goes for salaries, 2/3 of it, or even 3/4 of it. If you look at benefits, 10, 12% pay for supplies and programs and really things like that. But when it comes to funding, even though 6% of GDP, total education expenses are funded at 8% level by the central government, 48% from state government and 44% from local government. And it's a lot from the state and local government simply because they have the bigger responsibility, right? So you definitely have that as an issue. So it's not really the funding, I would say, per se, but where the funding really goes.
Yeah,
Rajiv.
yeah, thank you. Okay, so friends, now we'll quickly move to the next topic. What we have is higher education. In higher education policy vision, what is saying is high quality higher education equity and inclusion is the motto what they're talking of. A higher education system of large multidisciplinary college and universities. This is what they're saying. They want to change the colleges from individual college to multidiscipline. This is going to be a very, very big change. Second, meaning of instruction, Indian local language, they want to encourage. Faculty and institutional autonomy, they're talking of establishing a national research foundation, regulation being tight and light, increase access and inclusion, and 50% GR by 2040. Let me give you data. The GR of 2017-18 is 26.4. So these are the main points of vision. Let me go to the structure, higher education structure. Slight change, not major change, but the change is instead of bachelor of 3 years, they're looking at bachelor of 4 years. And the 4th year is going to be the research where the bachelor is going to focus on. The second most important thing, there is an exit at each year. So after 1st year, if you exit, if you're not able to complete, you'll get a certificate. If you exit after 2nd year, you'll get a diploma. If you exit after 3 years, you'll get a bachelor. And if you exit 4 years, it's a research bachelor, what they're talking about. The masters, if you've done 4 years of bachelor, your master's will be 1 year. If you have done only 3 years of bachelor, your master's will be 2 years. And out of those 2 years, 1 year is going to be research. And they have removed something called MPhil. If you had to get into research area further, there's PhD, which actually will save time. So either for a master's, after master's, you can get into research or PhD, or even after 4 years of research, you can get into PhD. So this means the time frame what you do for PhD will remove dramatically, and more, as you can see, more research focus. So 2 things only: more research focus, and second is more exit what they are planning with that area. Raviji.
A quick reaction here is that when you look at the US structure, it is more or less similar to the new system that is proposed in India. But here are a few things to keep in mind. The first thing is that, after you complete your high school in the United States, you have two choices. Well, you have three choices. Stop at high school level. You can get some jobs, but those jobs are almost gone. Or you can go into a 2-year associate's degree, as it is called. That is more of a vocational track in many different areas where you can get a job. For example, you can get a associate's degree as an automotive technician, which means you can go work in a garage and where you can do the basic oil changes. And as you get more experience, you'll be able to work on engines and refurbish the engines too. So those pay jobs. I mean, those are paying jobs that you can get. You can become a welder technician. You can become a air conditioning technician. You can become a plumber, carpenter, and so on and so forth. Also, what happens is that in order for you to get a associate's degree, you have to complete a certain number of classes. Each class has credits. So you have to complete a certain number of credits. Normally, it is about 60 credits. And the credits, when you do the breakdown, they will include credits in basic mathematics and English and language and civics and other things, but they will also include credits in the discipline. But after you finish your 2-year degree and then you say, you know what, now I want a 4-year degree, you can have those credits count towards a 4-year degree. So the idea of credits and the transferability of credits that's in the new policy is really very important too. There's not really a whole lot of detail that you can get from the structure, but how the credits are included and what these credits are and what is considered a credit. Hopefully we'll get to talk about that later. Rajiv.
Yeah. So I think just to add, Raviji, so this is where we are talking of philosophy again, institutional restructuring. As I told you, they want to get into multidisciplinary university, higher education clusters. The university could be a research university or a teaching university, and they want to push in next 15 years all affiliate colleges to autonomous college, and few of the good autonomous college into becoming a university. So that's what they are consolidating the entire thing. The concept of affiliated college they want to move away from. There will be multidisciplinary education holistic, which we spoke about that. Important thing, they want to integrate STEM with arts and humanities, so students can pick and choose. They want to focus on soft skills, research-based specialization and internship. And this is where Ravi, your point comes. Academic bank of credit, ABC, is being started, where you can deposit your credits, right, and can do, as you just spoke about the credit system. So they're creating a bank out of it. Then about learning environment and student support, that's the other philosophy point. They're talking of the curriculum being very interesting to make it interesting. The pedagogy needs to be good quality. Assessment needs to be very scientific. And they're pushing on development of the students' capacity. Based on student capacity, the development needs to happen. Last but not the least point, they're talking of internationalization. That's a good focus. They want to make India as a global study destination, and how to go about doing it. Collaboration with Indian universities, Indian university campuses abroad, greater mobility to Indian students to go abroad. They want to top 100, institutes to come to India. And by the way, this is one area where, as you know, as an organization, we specialize and we are having a lot of Indian institutes and Indian private university to become a global institutes and international of that. So this is a philosophy. And Raviji, quick.
A quick comment on here, when you get to the higher education area, this is where you begin to notice that some of the key ideas definitely are more similar to what exists in the United States, the multidisciplinary universities and so on and so forth. Even if you are offering more technical degrees, you have other disciplines as well. The credit-based system is in common for all universities. And there is this very clear understanding of what does it mean to have a credit. What are the basic criteria to determine what credits are at each class level, which then makes it transferable. You can go from one university to another, one college to another, one subject to another more easily. So, so many of these American ideas have also been borrowed by European countries. So for example, you have something called in Europe called the ECTS, European credit transfer system. It's the same notion of credit. So there's not really a whole lot of new things here from my perspective, from a European or even a US perspective. It's nice to see these things being included here that only are going to benefit students, which means greater responsibility on colleges and universities, because assessment will become a very important part.
Yeah, yeah. So the other higher education focus area they put, like vocation is here. I think I've spoken enough, but they're looking at reimagining vocational education. That's a very important pillar. They want to integrate with the mainstream, because in India, vocational education is not viewed in a positive light and said, yeah, just do nahi kar kuch kar paye, wo vocation mein jata hai. They want to remove that. Every child at the exit who have one vocational skill, whether it's a school or a college, and 50% of the students who have exposure by 2025, by as early as 25 to vocation. About research, they believe it's a very, very critical to country's growth. They're creating a robust system of ecosystem of research, and there's a national research foundation which will promote research, fund the research overall into the system. Then they're looking at a professional education, the professional education itself, which means the technical education, the medical education, the agricultural education, the legal education. They are looking at integrating it part of the higher education and convert them into multidisciplinary. But the legal and healthcare are actually being currently kept out of the regulatory system. Whatever they will have their separate system. And last but not the least, huge emphasis in using technology and digital learning. They are creating a National Education Technology Forum called NETF. Platforms like Diksha and Swayam, depending on school or college being created. They're creating virtual labs. So these are the other areas which they believe would help in implementing what we were talking about earlier. Right?
So, the vocational education part is something that has to be thought out more completely. I think that there is a lot of foundation in India to base this upon. And the second thing about the National Research Foundation, I think it's much needed. We had National Research Foundation will replace the UGC in some ways, especially when it comes to the grants part of it. And that would only improve the competitiveness of research that is done in India and colleges and universities. Rajiv.
Yes. Coming to faculty, the way they've got a lot of emphasis on teachers, because they believe that a fundamental change needs to happen in the school education teaching. In college, they have stated, but these are the points they have stated. First, they're talking of motivated, energized, and capable faculty in HAIs. Okay, they're saying that a lot of experiments were done, but they have not been very successful in having motivated faculty. That's one question they're raising. But the basic thing they say, they will increase in infrastructure, facilities, the education technology that need to be available. They say duty should not be excessive for the teachers. Student teaching ratio needs to be moderate. They recognize that, and they want to give freedom to design curriculum and pedagogy, which is not there today. So current education system does not give the freedom. They want to give incentives, how through rewards, promotion, recognition, and movement into leadership. By the way, they clearly say that if you do not want to get into leadership area, just want to be into teaching as a faculty, they're perfectly okay. They don't want to push you for leadership position, right? Which is there today, by the way. In terms of recruitment, they're talking of a tenure track. A tenure track means there's something like probation. Before coming on board, there's a tenure track, what you have, and a transparent process and criteria they want to lay out. By the way, these are intents. They're still not detailed, these points. As for assessment is concerned, they are creating something called IDP. It's called Institute Development Plan. And the assessment will have a peer review, peer and student review, innovation, the teaching and the pedagogy, what the teacher has done or faculty has done, quality and impact of research, what the faculty has done, the professional development activities that they have done, and what services the faculty is giving to the institute and community, right? So these are the criteria for assessment they want to put in. Then institute leadership, they also want to identify and develop leaders very early, right? But the basic thing in that is that the faculty has to be excellent, academic, and should have a good service credentials and should have demonstrated leadership and management skills. So these are the areas, by the way, here it's not gone in detail as they've gone in schools, but this is what they say. Raviji.
I'll wait until we get to the next slide. Rajiv, continue.
Okay, so faculty is done, sir. Then I get into regulations. Any point on faculty?
No, not
okay.
now.
Okay.
Go on.
Okay, then About regulatory framework, they say there's a new framework they are creating. A higher education commission is being created, the main policy body. Uh, Under that, there will be 4 functions, so 4 bodies which don't mix with each other. First is about regulatory function, which will be the body called National Higher Education Regulatory Council. Accreditation function will be with NAC. NAC is also there today, but they want to strengthen NAC. The funding function will go to HEGC, which is Higher Education Grant Council. This is what I believe, Raviji, is the UGC will get converted into, right? What its original role was. And academic setting function will be by a GC called General Education Council. All existing accreditation bodies, which we have, like, you have AICT or for pharmacy or, agriculture, all of them will become PSSB, which is professional setting boards. They will set the professional standard and they will become part of GEC. So now I'll take even the teachers, school teachers will become the part of GEC. The standard board will become as GEC. They are very clearly saying that all higher education, public or private, would be treated on par. Currently, there is a huge gap between how the public institutes are being treated and how the private institutes are being treated. And most important, the Minister of HRD, which is Human Resource Development, will get converted to Minister of Education. So this is what the regulatory framework talks about. Raviji.
So very quick comments, the Higher Education Commission of India is going to play a very important role. I hope that the Higher Education Commission is like a traffic policeman or policewoman, where they're directing traffic, making sure that there is enough time for the vehicles from one side to go to the other side. Meaning to say that most of the work will be done by these 4 bodies that are listed below. Accreditation function becomes very important. So, for example, in the what is being proposed is national accreditation, actually continuation of what exists today in India. But in the US, there is no national accreditation. Entire country is divided into regions, and what you have is regional accreditation. If you have regional accreditation, a university in Houston, Texas has this regional accreditation, what it means is that some of the students can receive funding from the federal government in loans to fund their education. It also means that there is a minimum requirements for quality and service and support that is being provided to all the students. From an Indian context, the General Education Council is the one that is going to play a very crucial role in this, in developing what it means for a university or a college in India to be multidisciplinary. Right. So, for example, in India, we really think about, the IIT as being only technical. They only do engineering, computer science, those kinds of things. Or the Indian Institute of Science, well, they only do scientific things, physical sciences, chemical sciences, life sciences, and so on. But if you look at the IITs, look at IISc, you will see that there are departments of anthropology. There might be departments of policy, academic departments. And so they're already providing a multidisciplinary education that is being expected of every single engineering college or a business college, where they will provide education for students in areas that are different. And so, this structure is definitely viable, but, of course, there are lots of challenges that are in hand to be dealt with in the near future. But nevertheless, that will get closer to the implementation task, what it means for higher ed. For example, here's one really overlap between college and schools. When you think about accrediting functions, the NAC will accredit colleges and universities that offer degrees. One of the degrees will be the B.Ed degree. The B.Ed degree will become the minimum that is required to teach in schools. What do students learn when they do a B.Ed degree? How multidisciplinary is it? Is one way to think about how higher education is a means to improve school education in India. And that is the way it works in most other countries. Right. Rajiv.
Okay, thank you. Audience, 5 more minutes. I think we're about to complete. We already crossed 90 minutes, but I'll quickly go through challenges, what we believe. First, in higher education itself, there are 117 areas of impact. This is not my statement. This is Education Secretary's statement of India. Okay. Many of the proposals, or some of the proposals, require legal changes. So that's where a chance. The third, funding. I think I may be repeating myself. These last two, I strongly believe in. The first, they have not focused on the needs of business, industry, and society. right? I believe in higher education that should have been done. And third, yes, multidiscipline is fine, but at the pulse of the Indian education system, which is what Indian educators or Indian professions are known worldwide, like IIT, IIM, IC, IIMs, right? If they become too multidisciplinary, they will lose out on them. So they should retain their, yes, multidiscipline. Some part is okay, but not the way which it has been stated in the policy document. Sir.
Two comments really, I mean, even though the policy you feel doesn't focus on the needs of business, industry, and society, I would say that that really becomes the responsibility of educational institutions to make sure that what it is that they're offering to students does benefit society as a whole, and in particular, the business sectors and the social sectors and the government sector too. Right. And so, if indeed the policy did address these things, then it would become overly prescriptive. When you read through the policy, there are those things that talk about what should be included in a school lunch. That's overly prescriptive, in my opinion. Provide nutritious lunch based upon some outside measures. Whether you feed them, ghas pata, or whether you feed them fruits, that's totally different as long as it meets the objectives, right? And so we really want to think about it. And I really don't believe that IIMs and so on and so forth will really be at a disadvantage. They will lose out. It's simply because they already do it and they provide a really good model on how to develop. Specialized institutions must maintain specialized. That's your point. I
Yes.
agree with that for sure, right? But then you teach students science and only science and not really implications of science and society, then there's something wrong with the way in which science is going to be practiced by them, right?
Right.
And so we're really not talking about, the primary, but the secondary part. So I
Right.
think that's good. And, hopefully we have some questions. People still want to ask some questions at this
Yes,
late stage.
yes, yes. So what I will do, I'll go to this, especially a key taker for teachers, faculty. If I'm to summarize, teachers' profession to be restored is past glory of guru. You are the heart of the learning. Congrats to you, all of you. And this is becoming a profession of choice to all of you. And I believe you'll get all your dues. You are expected to be certified and trained. There is a substantial investment the state is doing, higher education is doing, and you are also expected, personally expected to do it. There's a multilingual language type teaching. You need to understand more languages. As I said, for jobs, you need to have TET, NTA, demands, local language, and there'll be less regulation, more environment, and no extra administrative work. Government has stated it very, very clearly. This is a takeaway from the faculties. Quickly about us, I will just take 1 more minute. We are TASA, as you said. We are an organization which is there from last 30 years, and the largest study abroad organization or international education organization in South Asia, right? And as I said, we have so many brands what we work in different area. We have impacted more than 2.7 million students by now, and this is about us.